Well, seeing that we have a quorum, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Built Heritage Subcommittee meeting of March 9th, 2021. I'd like to call the members to order. This meeting is being held remotely through Zoom. Those who do not need to participate in the meeting can also watch it live on the Ottawa City Council YouTube channel. While this meeting is being facilitated by technology, we are still gathered together on Indigenous land, and in the spirit of reconciliation, I would like to acknowledge that the City of Ottawa is built on the unceded Algonquin-Anishinaabe territory. The people of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the people and land of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe Nation, and the City of Ottawa also honors all First Nation people, Inuit and Métis peoples, for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Just a reminder to participants to please keep your microphones muted until I call upon you to speak. I will provide each committee member with the opportunity to ask questions or comment on each item in the order in which they raise their hand in Zoom. For panelists, the raise hand option is found at the bottom of the participants list. For those calling in, please press *9 to raise your hand. The committee coordinator and I will be watching for those cues. Members are also reminded to submit any motions, visual supports, or declarations of interest in writing to the coordinator at their earliest opportunity. Although the deadlines have passed for residents to register to speak and provide written submissions to the subcommittee, residents can still make written submissions to council. If you have technical difficulties signing into the meeting, you can contact the committee coordinator by calling 613-580-2424, extension 22953. A reminder that if participants are having technical issues with their Zoom connection, they may call in using the backup telephone number provided by the coordinator. And before we begin, I'd really like to take this opportunity to welcome our newest member, returning member, and past chair. I think it's just wonderful that he is returning, Councillor Gower. So it's great to see you around the virtual table. So let's move on with the agenda. I've received no regrets. Could the committee coordinator please call the roll? A reminder to members to unmute themselves when they are called.
Member Halsell.
Present.
Member Podolsky.
Here.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Member Conforti.
Here.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Moffat. Vice Chair Quinn.
Present.
Chair King.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest?
Hi, Chair. I don't have any declarations for this meeting, but have been advised to just reiterate my declaration for the previous meeting, as I wasn't present after consultation with the Ethics Commissioner or Integrity Commissioner. That is the meeting, the Joint Planning Committee and Built Heritage Subcommittee meeting for the Chateau Laurier. I, after consultation with the Integrity Commissioner, had a potential deemed indirect pecuniary interest because my employer is the National Capital Commission. So just to reiterate that in person.
Thank you. We do appreciate that, Member Hassel. So the next item on the agenda is confirmation of minutes. The following draft minutes are submitted to Built Heritage Subcommittee for confirmation. Minutes 19 for the regular meeting of January 20th. Minutes 1 for the special joint meeting of Planning Committee and the Subcommittee of February 5th. And minutes 20 for the special meeting of the Subcommittee of February 5th. Are these meeting minutes confirmed?
Carried.
Confirmed.
Thank you. In terms of communications, we have received a response to the inquiry of Councillor Brockington regarding conservation plans, and it is duly noted on the agenda. Our first item concerning planning, infrastructure, and economic development right-of-way, heritage, and urban design services is an application to alter the Châtelet building on 205 Scholastic Drive, formerly 175 Main Street, a property designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Can staff please provide an overview of this report?
Good morning, everyone. I'll just wait for my presentation to be on the screen. Oh, sorry, just bear with me for a second while I get my my notes up. Here we go. All right. So good morning, everyone, members of the Built Heritage Subcommittee. This application is for the Deschâtelet building, which is now located at 205 Scholastic Drive. Note that this address has recently changed from 175 Main Street. Next slide, please. This property is located in Old Ottawa East and is positioned between Main Street and the Rideau River. Next slide. The site features a 5-story stone structure constructed in phases beginning in 1885. The Deschâtelet building was constructed as a scholasticate for the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, a missionary order which sent priests and lay brothers to Canada to teach. It represents the role that the Oblates have played in the community since their arrival in Ottawa in 1844. Next slide. Committee members will remember this file as a heritage permit was issued last fall for this building. The alterations included the demolition of the rear chapel wing. The permit was approved conditional upon the following items: approval of the zoning. This was granted in the fall of 2020. Documentation of the chapel wing. This has been captured and submitted to the City of Ottawa Archives. Retention of some of the stained glass windows. These will be reviewed at the time of demolition. And the submission of a second heritage permit. This is what is before the committee today. Next slide. Here are the plans that were approved in 2020 showing the rear chapel wing that will be demolished. The current application includes filling in the void that will be left by the chapel wing, altering the front entrance, replacing the windows, as well as a few other minor changes to the building. Next slide. This is the rear view of the building. The portion outlined in red shows the removed chapel wing and the new permanent infill wall. The new wall will be glass on the first floor with metal panels above and metal shingles on the 5th floor above the cornice line. Next slide. This cornice line will respect the primary cornice on the building, continuing the established datum line. The windows on the wall will also reflect a similar pattern as the existing windows on the building. The wall will project slightly from the building, echoing the massing left by the demolished chapel wing. Next slide. The proposal also includes an intervention to the front entrance in order to meet accessibility requirements. The front steps will be removed and the existing entrance will be lowered below grade. This allows for 2 ramps to flank the door. The frontispiece will not be altered as part of this modification. Instead, new masonry piers will be installed to support the existing pilasters. A simple canopy will be installed over the door. This canopy will be in line with the existing stone banding between the basement and 1st floor. The front door, its pediment, architrave, and flanking piers are identified as cultural heritage attributes in the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value. Of these elements, only the front door will be replaced with a modern double door. In this particular situation, the benefits of providing universal accessibility outweigh the negative impacts caused by this loss. Next slide. The windows on the building will be removed and replaced. The current windows were installed in the 1970s and are aluminum. The new windows will also be aluminum and have the mounting bars on the exterior of the glass, providing a similar profile to the existing windows. While the windows themselves are identified as heritage attributes, it is the regular spacing, pairing, and shape that contributes to the cultural heritage value of the building. This will be maintained in the new windows. Next slide. Other minor alterations contained in this application include spot repointing, the construction of a glass link to connect to a future gymnasium. This is outlined in a red box on the left hand of the image on the screen, replacing existing mechanical penthouse structures, and modifying some secondary entrances. Next slide. Standards and guidelines are what we use to review alterations to heritage buildings. The heritage value of the Deschâtelet building is related to its design value as a Beaux-Arts style building, its association with the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, Roman Catholic institutions, and its various designers, and its contextual value as a local landmark. The proposed interventions protects the heritage value of the Deschâtelet building and its heritage attributes. Generally, the attributes include the stone construction, the classically inspired design elements, and the tree-lined alley from Main Street to the open forecourt. The proposal conserves these elements. Any stone restoration will be completed in a manner that respects the material and the building and will be done in areas only as needed. The proposed infill wall to fill in the void that will be left by the chapel wing will be clad in modern materials, making it distinguishable as a contemporary alteration. The massing, color palette, and detailing will make it compatible with the heritage building, while also being subordinate. In addition to this infill wall, a small glass link is proposed to the side of the building. This will connect to a future gymnasium. This link will be constructed using modern materials and will not impact any heritage attributes of the building. Next slide. As far as consultation goes, the Old Ottawa East Community Association was notified of this application. Heritage Ottawa was also notified, and I believe they've just sent in some comments. The ward councillors was notified, as were neighbors within 30 meters of the subject property. Next slide. Staff recommend to approve the alterations to the heritage building and delegate authority for minor design changes to city staff and issue a heritage permit with a 2-year expiry date. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashley, for that detailed presentation. I also note that we did see correspondence circulated from Heritage Ottawa and also from 2 other residents. I think that the correspondence from Heritage Ottawa was a qualified approval, and I think that the correspondence from the residents were in opposition to the report recommendations. We do have 3 speakers on the list: Luc Paulin, Doug Van Durham, and John Stewart, who are on the registered speakers list for presentations.
So I don't know if it's my turn to speak. So my name is Luc Poulin. I'm a representative of the owner, the Conseil d'École catholique du Centre-Est. So thank you, Mr. Chair and councillors. The CCC has submitted this project to the Ministry of Education since 2015. So Au Cœur d'Ottawa, the new school within that ward, being currently hosted at 88 Main Street. We are operating there. So this is actually our top priority for a new school within that ward, which is a much needed French Catholic institutional school within that area. The need for an institutional French school has been present for many, many years, and we are glad to be part of this community. The CCC has become owner since February 5th, and we enter into an agreement with the city and eventually to build a community center in a much needed also gymnasium area. The CCC is looking into incorporating eventually senior housing at the top 2 floors, which will remain vacant until we finalize the plans and with OCH. And we expect that the application and design meets to address a need to a construction of a new school, a community center, and housing. There's also, as Mrs. Ashley brought on to the committee, there's also an urgent need to bring this building to code and to address accessibility and mechanical and electrical needs to serve this as a school. So I think myself and Mr. Doug, the architect, will be able to respond to any questions that you might have. And we thank you very much for your time and consideration into approval of this project.
Thank you so much for that delegation. And are there any questions to this joint delegation by members of the subcommittee? And I do see that Member Podolsky has raised his virtual hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair King. Question has to do with the future uses of the upper floors for housing, which I welcome. And I guess the question to the presenter is just to discover whether or not there will be any major interventions required to the exterior of the building because of the housing, future housing use, if that is known now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd be happy to take that question. Right now, the plans we're putting forward, we do not see any requirement for interventions to the exterior of those top 2 floors. The plan is to replace the windows as with the lower levels. And certainly, I saw or heard some questions from the community regarding mechanical equipment required for the residential. What we're currently showing in the plans is a mechanical system that has the future capacity to accommodate the residential uses within what we're showing on the roof and in those projections.
Very full answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Podolsky. I don't see other raised hands, so but I do see that Mr. Stewart is also around the table. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to just ensure that he wanted to make comments today.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity. No, I prepared the CHIS, and I'm here just in case there are questions regarding it or any of the issues that might come up in this file. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate that. I do see that Vice Chair Quinn has raised her hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my question is for Doug Vandenham. Just speaking to the mechanical penthouses, what's the cladding, proposed cladding for those elements?
Thank you for the question. Currently, we're proposing a metal siding cladding for those penthouses. We're trying to select a material that is going to pick up some of the kind of the surrounding colors of the sky and change with that, as opposed to something that's going to stand out. So we're looking at a lighter color with a bit of reflectivity to it. Final product's not selected yet.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And I don't see anybody else's hand raised. So I'd like to thank the delegations for their submissions. Does the subcommittee have any questions for staff? And I see that Vice Chair Quinn has raised her hand, followed by Councillor Menard. So I'll ask Vice Chair Quinn to ask her question.
Thank you. I'm not sure actually that the question is for staff or not. It might be for Luc Nopin or for the Hoban team. The main entrance, is this front entrance, is obviously one of the key heritage character defining elements of the building, listed as such. Is this going to be the main entrance for the school? I can't hear if anybody's trying to answer.
I think I would refer back to the architect on this.
One second, they're coming back online.
My understanding is yes.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what the answer is.
So I want to confirm that the proposed entrance is going to be the principal entrance for the school itself. And there's still some discussion to be had with the city Parks and Recs staff, and just how to address the need for the community center, which in terms should have been met mostly from the back of the building itself.
Yes, I wouldn't think the two would be shared as entrances. The currently surrounding the main doors, it appears to be a metal, is that the case? A metal contour surround the two front doors? Ashley?
Are you referring to the stone that's currently there? The existing is stone.
But right immediately around.
It's glass and it has some metal between the glass.
Okay, it's really hard to see, I have to say. I'll have to go back and have another walk around there. It's been a while. I just, I don't know. I personally, if I can make a comment, I find that the design of the entrance is really, you know, it's not terribly appropriate. It's not very satisfying. I would have thought that the Hoban team, with their reputation and wonderful designs and as an architectural firm, could have come up with something a little more pleasing. I'm just wondering what the limitations were around the coding on this, around building code. Are they forced to have the glass doors at the main entrance?
I'm happy to address that comment. There's no code requirement to have full glass doors, although generally some visibility through an entrance door is required for safety reasons, so that someone exiting doesn't swing the door into someone entering. But what our approach here was to try to create an entrance that provided a little bit of transparency into the inside space of the building. Right now, the existing entrance a solid door panel with some side lights around it, and it's in some sense a little bit imposing for what we would expect to find for a school, which is a public institution. And so our intent in this case is to redesign the entrance while respecting the major elements of the portico and the kind of the horizontal line of the existing of that existing floor plane with the new canopy, but in a way that provides essentially provides a public glimpse into that kind of front entry vestibule area of the school. We think that's an appropriate response or appropriately balanced between the heritage aspects and really redefining the use of this building.
No, I can see it definitely poses a challenge for what you're trying to achieve, and I respect that. I just was wondering if some of the design choices were based around meeting code requirements, and you've answered that question, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Vice Chair Quinn. I see that other members have raised their hand, and the next member is Member Conforti.
Thank you, Chair. I also had a comment on the entrance as well. Similarly to Carolyn, I'm not super happy with the aesthetic, but my question was more for the advice that was given to the architectural firm insofar as were they encouraged to keep the existing doors and try to make those work, modify them? And did they find that they couldn't do that, so that's why they're now being replaced? And if that's the case, what's going to happen to the original doors? Are they instructed to keep them somewhere else in the design? So yeah, I just wanted to know, that was my first question, was what were the discussions around that, and what were the, I guess, recommendations from staff in regards to the redesign of that front entrance?
Hi, this was the proposal. Essentially, what we see today is what was presented to city staff as an option. We didn't discuss the salvage of the doors or any other options. We sort of made some recommendations as to the canopy that was being introduced over the door of the new door. But other than that, there weren't a whole lot of discussions about different options for this for the entrance.
Okay, so Chair, I guess to rephrase my question then, was there any study in modifying the existing doors to be universally accessible, or was that never even on the table? And what were the limitations, similar to Carolyn's question, what were the limitations around that? Or why wasn't that looked at?
If I may, Mr. Chair, just inform, there was no clear instruction given to the architect in terms of removing the existing doors. Our concerns for the school board is to introduce at least a functional entrance to the children. So the weight of the doors, accessibility was the main concern, and the use of the doors in terms of the aspect itself. If we could have introduced those and at least keep them, that would have been for sure one of the things that we would have looked at. But also, again, speaking to the fact that what Mr. Doug just voiced, is that we wanted to create also some kind of a see-through through the building. Just that was one of the aspects that was proposed originally by regional, to have that see-through through the building itself and create some more luminance inside the building itself. So that's why we introduced more glass into that. But the accessibility was more of the focus itself, and to create a functional entrance so that the children can enter into the school without help from adults.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess. Okay. I guess I'm not fully convinced that there was enough study into could we keep the doors. But again, like you said, there was an instruction to do that. But maybe that's the concern I have, is that should have been the first approach. And then if that couldn't work, then you sort of, you know, that's how usually that's how conservation goes. Like you try to modify, and if you can't, then you replace. I guess it's really hard. That leads to my next question. It's really hard to understand how this site and how this building is going to work, because we've only seen portions of the design. So this was a question for staff, like what can we expect in the next heritage application? So I understand there was a heritage application that was approved for the demolition of the chapel wing, which at the time was very difficult to approve. And I remember not voting against it because I wasn't, again, convinced that it needed to be demolished. But so that was the first heritage application. This one is for alterations on the building itself. Will we be seeing a heritage permit for the future development surrounding the building based on the impact it will have on the heritage asset? Like, what is the next step in this process in terms of what we will see at this committee?
It's my understanding that the gym will be forthcoming, and that will be an heritage application to accompany that design. And the applicant can speak to any other changes that they may require in the future. And any other changes will require a heritage permit.
A separate heritage permit? Okay. Yeah. So I guess I understand from previous questions that this front entrance will be the main entrance, but is that where the school buses will be dropping off? Will the school buses be dropping off at the back? Will the schoolyard be in the back? Will the children actually be entering mostly from the back? Like it's very hard to, without the full picture, it's hard for us to know if the impact on that front entrance is really warranted, is the question, I guess. So, or a comment, it's not really a question. That was all I had.
Okay, well, thank you, Member Conforti. The next person with their hand up is Member Hassel.
Chair, I don't know if somebody could answer Member Conforti's question though around the lane and the back versus the front, and I think there was a question there. If not, I'll come back to it in my comments.
Yeah, maybe we'll just come back and I'll let Member Hassel ask her question.
Thank you, Chair. My question also had to do with the retention of various building elements. I know from the chapel wing there is an effort under the CHIS to retain as many of those stained glass windows as possible. I'm wondering how they're intended to be incorporated, because right now that's quite loose. And while we're on the topic of conserving these elements, I was wondering if there's been more discussion as to where those will be going as part of this adaptive reuse.
I would defer to the applicant's team for their intentions for where to use them on site.
Currently, there is no specified location for those chapel windows to be reused. They're quite large. They're about a little over 8 feet high and about a bit over 12 feet long. And as part of the demolition process of the chapel, we're exploring the whether they're going to be able to come out in a single piece or they're going to have to be dismantled to a certain degree. The intent for reuse is to find a location, likely in the community center or gym, that is a suitable scale to actually incorporate those. But first, we're going to have to see what the condition of the windows are when they come out of the chapel space. So there's nothing on the plans right now that says, you know, reused windows go here. Can I actually also address the? Oh, can I also address the front entrance accessibility questions that came from two of the panel members? One of the challenges we ran into early on with this building, and what we generally run into with a lot of adaptive reuses of buildings built prior to 1950, is that front entries tend to be half a level above grade. In this case, the original front entry for the building was actually almost a full level above grade and had a significant number of stairs you had to go up to get to. When the building was reclad, that entrance was lowered to kind of halfway between the first level and the second level, which meant that, first of all, to get to the door, someone would have to go up a set of stairs. And then once inside the building, there was a second set of stairs. And from a point of view of accessibility and really meeting the intents of providing a universally accessible building, particularly for the use of a school, it was very, very difficult to work with that half a level up outside, half a level up inside split. And so that constraint of accessibility was one of the primary things that drove us to the design solution we've put forward in this heritage application of maintaining the portico and in its current location, but to essentially lower the entry floor down to the lower level, so that as opposed to having a stair on the outside or a large, you know, very significant piece of ramping on the outside to get to that level, plus needing some sort of stair or some sort of lift on the inside to reach either of the lower level or the second level, we felt it was a less obtrusive heritage intervention to lower that entrance down and create that new kind of depressed front entryway for the school. So I hope that kind of provides a little bit of insight into our thinking and our design approach for that area.
If I may just add on to the retaining of the stained glass, for sure, as Mr. Doug just mentioned. So regional is actually within the works of trying to remove those stained glass, and the CCC has agreed temporarily to store them within the building, the Châtelet building. In the meantime, just to try to see how they will be incorporated within either this building or another building, which is the gym adjacent to it, as soon as we finalize the agreement with the city.
Yeah, thank you for that input. I was wondering if Member Hassel had any more questions.
No, it was really seeing how the retention of the windows was carried through from the demolition application to this current one for modifying the new building. But if that's still to be fleshed out, then I gather city staff will be following up and reviewing how those are incorporated more.
Thank you for the questions. And the next person with his hand raised is Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks to the members for asking very, very good questions. I'm supportive of the overall approach here. I think a lot of it makes sense, but I also have similar questions and comments that we've been talking with the applicants about. And we did hold a meeting with them and the community, and generally I'd say the community is overall on board, but again, they also have some questions about the front entrance and other pieces. So I'll start in the fire lane in front. This is actually going in city space. It's a park space portion of it is, and it's actually changing some of the potential outcomes for the park right in front, which is also a heritage feature, heritage attribute. So I'm just wondering, in the depictions, you've actually put buses in the lane in the pictures. but there's no agreement right now to have any vehicles in that lane at this point, if someone can just confirm that.
Yes, I do want to confirm that it always has been somewhat of our intent just to try to take off buses from the municipal roads and just to not create chaos within the community. But nevertheless, I think the fact remains that we still need to enter into somewhat of an agreement with the city, as the request has been forwarded to staff, city staff, to consider putting buses within that lane. Just a reminder that fire lane is going to be deemed a request, or not really a request, but a code requirement in terms of addressing the fire department needs. And as soon as we present our full permit application, then we will receive comments from the city staff to that effect.
Okay, and member Conforti had mentioned whether the fire lane could be at the back or the intent there, and was there any thought of putting it in a different location, or must it be right in the front?
The CCC wasn't able to acquire additional space in the back, and that would have, because of difficulties in terms of, I think, sloping and also accessibility to the school and to the building and the different application. But in that terms, there was no conclusion to relocate that fire lane. It was always deemed and submitted as through the CDP, through the city, that the fire lane would be in front of the school.
Yeah, and I think the concern is we don't want to have vehicles going. It's going to be a public park. It's going to be a beautiful public park, and you don't want to have vehicles driving through a public park where you can avoid it. And in this case, we can avoid it. And I think we need to make sure there's no agreement for buses. Or I've even heard some people mention having cars go through that lane as well, be driving through there in front of the park. And so that's a concern of my office. I know Kevin's on here as well. But that I just want to raise that concern, Chair, and make sure that there's no agreement reached. We are giving some delegated authority today in the second clause of the motion, but I want to reiterate that there is no agreement with our office or anyone else at this point to have vehicles use that fire lane in front, going through some park space. There's also a comment in the CHIS that goes through the connectivity with the park and the front entrance of the building. And there's a comment in there that says it'd be nice if there has to be a fire lane in front, if there's some connectivity with the actual front entrance. Because right now it's just a lane going through, there's no connectivity, there's no flow. It really cuts that space off. The three paths end there. And it would be nice. So if staff or the applicant can comment on the connectivity of that lane leading into the front entrance as a feature that might be desirable in the future, be helpful.
Well, I'll definitely welcome input from Mr. Wary. I know that that he's on the line. Of course, this is straying a little bit away from the heritage permit and might be more in the realm of site plan control, but I definitely want to hear the input from staff.
Thank you, Chair. And to respond to Councillor Menard's concerns, the Forecourt Park is the official name of the park that's in front of 205 Scholastic. It is a city-owned park, and it is subject, actually, all our plans are yet to go through a public consultation process, and the design of the forecourt is also subject to Built Heritage Subcommittee approval as well, because the park itself has heritage elements to the overall area. So for the purposes of a school opening, a temporary fire lane is being permitted at the front because that is definitely required in order to operate a school safely. However, the final design of these plans will be subject to further negotiation with the school, with design consultations with the community, and further approvals through this committee as well, subcommittee as well.
That's great. Thanks so much, Mr. Wary. Appreciate that and our conversations on this. I think it is in with Chair. Just so you know, it's in the CHIS, so it was there discussed in there that lane, and obviously relates to the building in a heritage context. And so I hope you permit me just one more quick question about that far lane or comment about it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So if we can work on that together to reduce its impact on the heritage attributes of this building, to make it flow a little bit better. And I know it needs to be 6 meters wide, and the minimum requirements are a gravel road. But the more we can connect it and have connectivity going through the forecourt park right into the front, I think the better we'll all end up. So looking forward to those discussions and consultations that come up. With regard to the front entrance, there was members of my community that did comment on the need for a more grand front entrance into the building. And that was a desired feature. I understand why the application has been submitted as it has, and I'll be, I support it as it is. But I know there was some desire there for that piece, as well as some concerns about the mechanical on the top of the roof. And there was a suggestion to put that in the top floor. And I'm just wondering, I think there was some discussion about cost related to that. If Mr. Vandenham can just comment on the difference between the two and having it on the roof and the relationship with the heritage building.
Certainly, I'd be happy to comment on that. I guess one of the premises that we started with on this project was to try to best accommodate the range of uses that are being proposed here. So the community center, the school, and the residential component. And I think for the residential component to be successful in terms of a project, we want to make sure that we're allotting at appropriate amounts of space. And I'm hesitant to, just from that point of view, to say, we should take away fairly significant amount of floor space from that residential use to accommodate mechanical equipment. Second aspect of why, from our point of view, we believe mechanical equipment on the roof is a better solution is that the incorporation of mechanical equipment into a floor space in this building would require a fairly significant amount of louvering and mechanical air, like makeup air entrance. And that would require replacing, say if we took the approach of mechanical equipment on the two wings, essentially all the top floor windows on those wings would have to be replaced with ventilation louvers. That would have a fairly significant impact on the heritage aesthetic of the building at those top levels. I guess the third aspect is, given the scale of the building and our ability to, or our approach of breaking the mechanical equipment up into kind of 3 pods, so one in the center behind the building pediment, and then 2 pods on the kind of on the 2 lower wings, we think that we can manage, or we've mitigated the sightline impacts for someone who's standing in the forecourt or standing kind of within the, the viewing proximity of the building. I just caution that the elevation images, which do show the mechanical equipment looking fairly prominent, I guess, and that's raising the concern of people in the community. Those are views that are impossible views. You can't ever see a building from a purely elevational view. That's a viewpoint taken from an infinite distance away. And so it does not actually reflect the experience of someone standing in the forecourt. And if you look at the forecourt shots, you'll notice that the impact of the mechanical equipment on the rooftop, as seen from the shots looking from the west side of the forecourt, where the future residential back-to-backs will be, mechanical equipment, it has a very small impact on the roof line in those locations. So between all of those points, we think that the best solution here, from accommodating the 3 uses of the building, also from a heritage impact point of view, and from a cost point of view, are to put the equipment in those 3 groups on the rooftop.
Very helpful comments, especially that first comment around housing on the top. Even more incentive for us to get that affordable housing either through OCH or others in that top floor of that top 2 floors of that building, seniors affordable housing and others. So really appreciate that, and thank you for the presentation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. I don't see any other hands raised for questions for staff. So do any of the members have any comments on this item generally? And I see that Member Podolsky has raised his virtual hand.
Yes, thank you, Chair King. I think that I'm very pleased overall that we have found uses for this building, and the combination of a school and future affordable rental housing, I think, is actually wonderful. I think that the overall approach to the interventions of the exterior, I think, are very sound. I also support the concept of that the Hoban architects have shown as to how to enter the building for the students by bringing the entrance down to what I take to be the basement level, and bringing the slot that the entrance previously had down to what is essentially ground level. I think that the difficulty, and Doug, this is for you, is that the character of the interventions at the front entrance are a disappointment visually. I think that in particular because this is the focal point at the end of a long avenue leading from Main Street, and to come up this wonderful boulevard and the entrance as the focal point as an area where we have raised expectations. So I think that I would suggest that you work with Ashley and the community. I'm not going to introduce any particular motion on this, but I think you should work with Ashley and the community to come up with something that is really quite elegant, in its language that satisfies the position that this entrance takes. And so just make a note to revisit this, get rid of those clumsy things on each side of the door, whether they're stone or whatever. But that's just a little bit of informal advice, which constitute my comments on overall, a wonderful use for this building. And I can't wait to see it all occupied. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Podolsky. I don't know if anybody else is going to raise their hands for comment. I don't see other hands raised, but I also want to follow in the footsteps of Member Podolsky to say that I'm also supportive of the staff recommendation concerning this application to alter the building, really in order to facilitate the adaptive reuse and preservation of the building for wonderful uses in my estimation, both a school and affordable housing. I wish we could see more of these types of projects across the city where we utilize historic landmark buildings for contemporary use. And obviously, in order to achieve this, the construction of a permanent infill wall to fill in the void that will be left when the chapel wing has been demolished is necessary, as well as the replacement of the windows. But I do share a concern around the table here that there are aesthetic challenges concerning modification to the front entrance. However, we have to acknowledge that these modifications are required to meet necessary accessibility requirements. I would agree with Member Podolsky that it would be good if the applicant and the developers could really work with staff to have something that is more desirable in terms of the front entrance. However, overall, I think that this is a good report that's in front of us, and as a consequence, I will be supportive of the report. So the report is in front of us. Is the report carried?
Carried, yes.
This report is scheduled to be presented to Council on April 14th, 2021. The next item in the agenda is an application to alter Reagan House, 66 Stewart Street, a property designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Can I please ask staff to provide an overview of this report?
Good morning, members. I'll just wait for my presentation to come up. Okay. Before I begin, I would like to introduce myself to those on the committee I have not had the opportunity to meet. I am Jack Mallon, and I am a junior heritage planner that has been working with the heritage planning team since October of last year. Today, I will be presenting staff recommendations for a heritage permit application to alter 66 Stewart Street, a property designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Next slide, please. The house is located on the south side of Stewart Street between King Edward Avenue and Cumberland Street. Please note that in page 3 of the report, it mistakenly states that this property is surrounded by the Stewart Wilbrod HCD, but it is in fact surrounded by the Sandy Hill West HCD. Next slide, please. Known as Reagan House, 66 Stewart Street is a large 2-story red brick veneer picturesque Victorian residential building. The building features matching dormers flanking a central gable, a 2-story painted wood entrance porch, and decorative barge board. The house is an architecturally sophisticated example of middle-class housing, first appearing in the Ottawa City Directory of 1864. The building was constructed during the first phase of development in Sandy Hill by bricklayer John Reagan as his own residence. Today, the house is very intact. As you can see, the porch and brickwork is in very fine condition. Next slide, please. Some alterations have been made at the rear of the property, including the vinyl-clad shed dormer that can be seen in the picture on the left. Next slide, please. The application proposes the construction of a 2-story addition to the rear of the building, seen in the center of the site plan here, and the construction of new window openings on the east and west facades of the existing structure. Next slide, please. The addition will feature a flat roof, wood cladding, and will have side yard setbacks that are an additional 0.6 meters from the existing house. The new windows on the addition and the existing house will be constructed with aluminum clad wood to match the original wood windows. Next slide, please. 4 windows will be added to the existing house. The windows proposed on the west facade and the window proposed on the east facade's second story are in keeping with the historic style of the original windows. The proposed window on the first story of the east facade, seen at the bottom left, is not in keeping with the style and profile of the original windows. As a condition of approval, staff recommend that this new window and opening match the style and profile of the original windows on the front of the house. Next slide, please. Since this is a Part 4 designation, Parks Canada's standards and guidelines are used to evaluate this project. The proposed addition and new window openings align with the standards because the alterations will not compromise any of the character defining elements as laid out in the statement of reason for designation. The proposed addition is located at the rear of the building and will not negatively impact the massing or form of the original structure or symmetry of its front facade. The proposed addition is compatible with the original structure because its wood cladding aligns with construction materials that were commonly used in the 19th century. It is subordinate to the original structure because it is lower in height than the original building and is set in on both the east and west sides of the property. Additionally, the flat roof will not obstruct or interfere with the original roof line. The addition will be distinguishable from the original structure because its wood cladding, fenestration pattern, and flat roof ensure stylistic distinction. Lastly, the addition will not alter the form or integrity of the original structure. Next slide, please. As part of the pre-consultation pilot program, we discussed this project with the Community Association in December. ASH is supportive of the addition, but raised concerns about the minor variance requested for a reduced rear yard setback. We've provided ASH with the contact information for the planner responsible for the variance application. Heritage Ottawa is notified of the application and supports the addition if it conforms to the setback provisions. We've discussed this proposal with the ward councillor, and neighbors within 30 meters were sent notification letters. Next slide, please. Staff recommend that the Built Heritage Subcommittee 1, approve the application to alter the building at 66 Stewart Street, conditional upon the proposed new window and opening on the east facade of the original structure match the style and profile of the other windows on the historic building. 2, delegate authority for minor design changes to the general manager, planning, infrastructure, and economic development. And 3, that the permit be issued with a 2-year expiry date. This concludes my presentation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jack, for that excellent in-depth presentation. Very informative, both to the subcommittee and to the general public. On this report, we did receive correspondence from Heritage Ottawa, and we do have one speaker registered to speak, and that is Scott Irwin on behalf of the applicant. And if Scott's on the line, he can go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Scott Irwin. The presentation was covered off everything that I was going to talk about. I can answer any questions.
Excellent, thank you. And does subcommittee have any questions for Scott? I'm not seeing any hands raised. So does the subcommittee have any questions for staff on this file? And I see that member Hassel has her hand raised.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jack, for the presentation. Just a very quick basic question for me. The condition to have the east and western windows match those on the original building, does that also apply to the southern windows on the rear of the building?
No, this will only be for the windows added to the existing structure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I see that member Podolsky also has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you very much. This is a very minor point. Jack, could you put up the elevations again, the side elevations, if you wouldn't mind doing that?
Eric has those.
Yeah. Yeah, there we are. Maybe it's one of the disadvantages of my being an architect, but I noticed on this one that the major gable at the front and the dormers have been neglected in the drawing, or certainly it doesn't mean that they're going to be demolished. But I think that one of the things that should be done is that if an elevation is drawn, it should be the full elevation, which also records the heritage character defining elements, such as the major gable entrance, the front entrance, and the dormers. This is a record of an incomplete submission, and I think that it can be corrected, and I suggest that these two drawings be modified in order to include the heritage character defining elements of the exterior, so that the city has a record of what is there today.
Thank you. We will ask the applicant to correct the elevations and note this for future applications.
Thank you for that point of clarification, Member Podolsky, based on the expertise that you have, and it's much appreciated. And I know that staff has noted that they will look at this in the future in terms of future applications. Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, do any of the members have comments on this item specifically? And I see nobody with their hands raised. I just wanted to note that I'll be supportive of the staff recommendation concerning this application, as it does meet standard and guidelines for the conservation of historic places, with the condition that the proposed first story window and opening on the east facade be modified to match the style and profile of the other windows on the historic building, and that the proposed addition and alterations are also in keeping with the standards and guidelines in that the addition is located in the rear yard, setback lower than the original house, and clad in complementary material. Additionally, the new window openings will not affect the fenestration pattern of the original house. So as a consequence, I'm supportive of this report. Is the report carried?
Carried.
This report is scheduled to be presented to Council on April 14th, 2021. The next item is an application to alter 61 Park Road, a heritage property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and located within the Heritage Park, within the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District. Can staff please provide an overview of this report?
All right, let's wait for my presentation. Here we go. Okay, so applications for alterations to 61 Park Road, a property located within the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District. Next slide, please. The property is located at 61 Park Road at the corner of Park Road and Elmwood Avenue. Next slide. The house was built in circa 1908 and was designed by local architect Warner Nofke in the English cottage style. This is a Grade 1 house within the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District. The applicant has received a heritage permit in 2017 to alter this property. This included an addition to the side and rear, an increase to the roof pitch, some restoration elements of the existing house, and the relocation of the garage and driveway. The applicant did not build their house according to the approved heritage permit plans and are therefore requesting permission for their as-built condition. Next slide. Here are some images of the existing house. The blue box on the left image shows the addition to the side. The red arrows indicate areas of the building that differ from the approved plans. I will address these in more details in the upcoming slides. The right-hand image shows the west elevation as seen from Elmwood Avenue. This is a corner property and the side elevation is also important. Next slide. Here are the rear and east elevations. Most of what is seen in the images are the new garage and the addition. Next slide. These are perspective views from the side and rear of, so side and front of the house. Next slide. The heritage permit was approved in 2017. A left-hand image shows those approved drawings here. The red arrows identify the elements that staff are recommending the applicant be made to comply with from the previous approval. This includes removing the aluminum soffits and replacing them with wood. As per the guidelines in the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District Plan, aluminum soffits are not permitted. Also suggesting that the applicant reinstate the wooden rafter tails. Wooden rafter tails are original to the house and should have been reinstated after the alterations to the roof. The plan states that character defining attributes including, but not limited to, shutters, brackets, window details, shingling, barge board, and finials shall be retained and conserved. This guideline refers to the conservation of attributes of the building, like rafter tails. There should be recommendations also to paint the exposed wood trim around the front door, remove the wooden post, and reinstate the open wooden canopy over the door. As stated in the plan, the conservation of small canopies found on many houses in the district is encouraged. The house historically had a wooden canopy, and the 2017 permit included plans to reconstruct the original canopy, which was in poor condition. This is an important attribute that typifies English cottage style and should be retained. The last element of the condition is to paint the exposed wood on the side porch, removing the metal flashing, and installing the missing horizontal wooden beams. The plan states that screened-in porches were popular in the mid-20th century in the district, and the retention of these porches is encouraged. As part of the design for the 2017 permit, heritage staff supported the relocation of the screened-in porch from the east facade to the west facade in order to accommodate the new addition. In reconstructing this porch, some of the detailing making it appear subordinate was altered. Staff recommend the removal of the metal flashing and the reintroduction of the wooden horizontal beam. This beam connects to a datum line across the house, creating a break between the first and second floor. Next slide. This is the side elevation from Elmwood Avenue. Note that the wooden rafter tails are not present and the soffits are aluminum, not wood. In the rear addition, it was planned to have a half timbering motif. However, the applicant did not install this. Staff have no concerns over this alteration as it does not impact the heritage attributes of the house. Next slide. Here's the landscape plan that was submitted as part of this application. The house and its addition is colored in blue, the driveway in dark gray, and the lighter gray items are the newly proposed paving areas. The applicant constructed 2 walkways in the front yard, one of which was not approved in the former landscape plan, and the other which was constructed wider than approved. Both are concrete, a material that is not widely used in Rockcliffe Park. The rear yard features a pool, wooden deck, and an at-grade terrace. While pools do not require a heritage permit, changes to this hard and soft landscaping must respect the guidelines in the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District. The proposal includes decreasing the size of the previously approved deck while substituting this hard surfacing with a paved area around the pool. Next slide. Staff have regard for Parks Canada standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places when reviewing applications to alter. Staff feel that the current as-built condition of the house does not conserve the heritage value of the historic place, neither the house nor the Heritage Conservation District. Many of the attributes have been removed and replaced with aluminum or concrete, including the soffits, railings, steps, and walkways. Next slide. Consultation. The Rockcliffe Park Community Association, Residents Association, was notified of this application. They have some comments in the report, and also I believe they submitted comments to the committee coordinator, which have been circulated. Heritage Ottawa has also submitted some comments. The ward councillor is aware of this application, and neighbors within 30 meters were notified of the submission. Next slide. Staff recommend to approve the application to alter the building subject to the following conditions: removing the aluminum soffits and replacing them with wood, reinstating the wooden rafter tails, cladding the concrete landing with stone and using wood for the front railings and steps, painting the exposed wood trim around the door and replacing the canopy with an open wooden canopy, painting the exposed wood on the side porch, removing the metal flashing, and installing the missing horizontal beams. Staff also recommend to approve the landscape plan conditional upon reinstating the front yard to the original 2017 approval. And the last item is to issue the permit with a 2-year expiry date. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashley, for that report. As you had noted in your presentation, there was a large amount of correspondence that came in. We did receive correspondence from 7 parties, including Heritage Ottawa, and we do have a number of registered speakers, including the owner, Charles E., who is first in line to speak. Charles, please go ahead.
I'll try again. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the panel. We've owned this property, 61 Park Road, since 2016, and we've been trying to make a home. We went through a very lengthy process, and at the end of it, just before we got the building permit, we were told that the screen porch could not be screened. It had to be open. And so that made it necessary to eliminate some parts, such as the screen door that was part of the original design. I have slides that I will use to show the points that I'm making, Mr. Chair. We had a lot of consultation. We had a lot of input from the heritage staff, and the final package that was approved, the design package, had 2 different designs on it. If I could ask for a slide to be brought up on the screen, that would be great.
The slides are up.
Yes. So could we go to page 18, Mr. Pilot? I will only skip this, do this skipping once. So this is the cover page of the approved design package. It shows a very clean eave line and gable, and there's no rafter tails visible on that. And that was the design that the architect submitted. And later on, during the process, I think the heritage staff convinced the architect to put rafter tails on. And the reason for that was because of some misunderstanding by heritage staff. If I could go back to page 1, Mr. Pilot, that would be great. And we'll go to page 2 if you don't mind. And next. Next, sorry. This is a bit out of order, but this shows this. I did this on the weekend. I put circle around houses in the Rockcliffe area with aluminum soffits. The red circles represent houses where there's aluminum soffits present. And I also made an area, just a large circle around an area, or drew a line around an area on the right of the screen. The new Rockcliffe area has higher than 80%, higher than 80% of houses had aluminum soffits. The area in the middle where the lake is and around there, I didn't do a survey, but I would think that it would be between the two, the percentage would be between the first and the second part would be somewhere in the high 50s to 60s. So this is but that's not the reason why it happened. I'll give you the information behind the aluminum soffit in a second. Also, I made a note of where new constructions that just finished or is being finished that I noticed in those areas where they have aluminum soffits, and those are the yellow spots on the map. So those are the, we can blow up the map and find out the exact address. The next page, next slide. Next slide shows houses, those 6 houses with aluminum.
1 minute left.
Pardon? Yes, those are new. Those are new construction. Those are finished around the same time we put the soffits in or are being built right now. So right now, this is happening. Now, if we could go to page 7, please, Mr. Pilot. This section has to do with rafter tails. As you can see, the original house on the upper left had no rafter tails. The drawing that is on the cover of the approved package had no rafter tails. Below, on the lower left, there's a picture of the part of the gable with fascia boards fallen off. There's a part of it that is still stuck on that shows that, there's no rafter tail. So those areas where there's rafter tail or what looks like rafter tail showing, they're showing because the house was falling apart. And we see these rafters. But that's not the original design of the house. So
your time is expiring. So I just wonder if you could wrap up your presentation.
I have more to talk about, Mr. Chair. I don't know how to handle that because this is a very complicated issue that I need to make a point on.
We typically afford delegates 5 minutes, but I usually allow some latitude in terms of wrap up. So can you just briefly summarize your? Can you just summarize your presentation?
Could I go through the slides quickly?
No, because we do have rules here for 5 minutes for all delegations. I
Yes.
do usually
Okay.
allow for some latitude, but if you can wrap up within a few sentences, your presentation would be appreciated, and then we will move forward with questions
Yeah.
to you from
Of course,
board
sir.
members.
Understood. So that's rough details. And we have other things as well. The site plan was approved that showed a wide front step and with a very narrow walkway up to the front that didn't line up properly. So in summary, the plans that were drawn was enough to get heritage approval, but not enough to make it workable for us. So as a result, we had to go back and fine tune some of these designs so that the house, the house that's built is complete and it can function as a house properly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And we do have questions for you from members of the subcommittee. The first person with their hand raised is Councillor Brockington. Councillor Brockington, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, sir, for your presentation. Realizing there's a lot to unload and perhaps questions posed to you will give you a chance to elaborate further. You touched upon this in your presentation, but I really want you to get into some specifics with me or with us. And let me just read to you a short paragraph in the staff report and then ask for your comment. So in 2017, a heritage permit was issued to alter your property. This included an addition, removal of the garage and driveway, creation of a new 3-car garage, increasing the height of the roof. Over the course of the past few years, that work has been going on. However, it has not been built according to the approved plans. So I guess the question is why? You alluded to the fact that perhaps you got direction from heritage staff that maybe you perceived allowed you to do this, but I want you to elaborate. Why has that not been followed as far as the heritage goes?
In terms of the original design, on the exterior, the plans were not. First of all, the house is still hasn't had a final inspection. We're still doing construction. It's slowed down. Second, there were aspects of the design that were not complete, such as the walkway and the lack of a side walkway from the front walk to the garage, to the driveway. And with regards to the aluminum, my construction manager found a company doing aluminum nearby. He got the company to come over and give us a quote, and then the aluminum got put on. And the understanding is that it's a common thing, and I didn't even pay attention at the time in terms of the aluminum, not being appropriate or acceptable. Other aspects, so I mean, the things that come up during construction, measurements on an old house don't line up properly. We had to move the porch slightly forward because the wood column would have blocked the window. So those things came up and we had to adjust on the ground as it happened.
Okay, Chair, I think the bulk of my questions are for staff, so I'm going to thank the delegate for his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, I think my question was the same as Councillor Brockington's, just the whole why thing. I mean, you show up at committee October 2017, you got a big petition of people supporting your application, and then you go and find a guy down the road to put your soffits on. I don't know. Strange thing to do. But that's my question was the same as Brockington's, and I guess he kind of answered it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Moffat. I don't see any other questions, so thank you, Charles E., for your delegation. The next person on the list is Linda de Carrier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association Heritage Committee. And I just want to clarify that it was the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association Heritage Committee that was notified by, kindly notified by city staff. So the first point that I would like to make to you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, is that the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association Heritage Committee supports the city staff recommendation for BHSC to council as stated in the documents that you have received in relation to the application to alter 61 Park Road after the fact. We have been informed by city staff that these changes were carried out without discussion or approval by city staff. And we confirm to you that these were also carried out without discussion with the RPRA Heritage Committee. I'd like to also point out that 61 Park Road is a grade 1 property, which should be treated with the highest level of conservation practice. Implementation of the approved designs respects and reinforces the attributes, objectives, and guidelines of the approved by Council Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District Plan and the principles of the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada. Their removal does not. Secondly, in addition, we've received the following from an immediate neighbor: that a fence abutting property was built over property lines and was subsequently removed by the owner of 61 Park upon request of the neighbor. It is unclear as a result if safety standards regarding fencing around a pool are now being adequately addressed. The neighbor also believes several trees were removed by the owner during construction and is unsure if this impacted the approved landscape plan. Finally, when constructing the driveway, the owner and/or workers cut the roots of the neighbor's large, mature Norway spruce, and an arborist recommended immediate removal of the tree, given the tremendous damage and potential danger of the huge tree falling over. The City of Ottawa forestry inspector was equally very concerned and recommended the tree be taken down as soon as possible. The neighbor is unsure if the finished driveway is in line with original approved plans and/or if the final driveway is at the appropriate distance from the neighbor's property, but it appears to cover a very large surface and is relatively close to the property line. That statement was a quote from the neighbor. Therefore, the RPRA Heritage Committee respectfully requests that the BHSC recommend that the neighbor's allegations be verified by city staff, and if confirmed, addressed by city staff, and that the RPRA Heritage Committee be kept informed. We recommend that if there are any new designs that require approval, that they be subject to the recommendations of the BHSC and approved by City Council. The third aspect of our submission to you, and this is the final one, Mr. Chair, city review and approval process, which involve the substantial engagement by the community and the assiduous administration of city staff, are expected to deliver as promised by the drawing subject to the heritage permit submitted by the applicant. Whether different designs had been submitted earlier and might have or might have not been approved is a moot point. Several different designs could have been submitted, which might have met the RPHCD
1 minute
plan.
left.
Sorry?
1 minute left.
Okay, and the S&G and city approval. Several would have not. The key point is that these are the designs that the owner presented and that the community, city staff, and BHSC analyzed, reviewed, recommended for approval, and that City Council approved, none other. The process carries a cost in time and resources from the community, from the city.
to support an applicant's discretionary decision without any consultation with city staff to not implement the designs that the applicant submitted in order to obtain a permit and which are then subject to a City of Ottawa heritage permit suggests that city processes are perhaps being considered foregone conclusions. This lays waste to community engagement and to city staff and processes, time and costs, and establishes a precedent not only for this applicant, but for all others who obtain a heritage permit henceforth to consider. We therefore support the recommendation from BHSC to council as stated. Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation, and I will ask whether any members of subcommittee have questions for you. I see no hands raised, so thank you for your delegation. The next registered speaker is Marianne Favor.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm Marianne Fever, and I live at 90 Park Road, which is immediately across the street from the application 61. I fully support city staff and the RPRA Heritage Committee's stand on this application. I feel that the permit should not be accorded until such time as the conditions that they list have been met. I would like to add a few remarks about the landscaping, which amongst others, I mean, we know that the landscape, I mean, the heritage plan says that you can only make a 3-meter entrance at the street level into the driveway. What they had originally planned to do looked amazing. It was weaving its way through a bank of trees that were between that and the garage. I said, bravo, good for you. You're conserving the trees. Well, what in actual fact happened was everything, all quite to the contrary. They just plowed down every tree except for one large maple, but then they made a very large driveway, much wider than I believe was permitted. And they also summarily took down a whole bunch of trees in the backyard. They're applying now for a deck of this kind of thing. And if you look at the final plans, there's really not much greenscape left at all. And so I just feel that this applicant has shown a complete lack of appreciation or knowledge of the heritage plan and is aimed to retain greenscape. The plan is so clear that softscape must dominate the property, and here the applicant has covered the property with an addition to the house that is, first of all, more than twice the size of the original house, and with excessive landscape. He's installed a pool and built a framework for the terrace and the deck and this huge wide driveway and wide walkways. And I just feel that he should be called on this, and I feel he should restore some of the green space if at all possible. And just finally, I just think, what does it mean when a property owner can build a house implementing multiple design decisions other than those proposed and accepted by city and upon which the permit was granted, and then to expect the city to rubber stamp it in an as-is condition? In addition, I find that changes to the landscape plan where there's massive loss of softscape and soft landscape and trees is particularly egregious. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation. Do any members of the subcommittee have any questions? I don't see any hands raised, so thank you for your delegation. And the next registered speaker is Beatrice Hampson.
Thank you, Councillor King and Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. And members of the BHSC committee and the hardworking Heritage of Ottawa staff. And many thanks for the opportunity to speak. Again, I fully support recommendations submitted by the RPRA and our chair, Linda DeCare. And my purpose in speaking today is to persuade members of the BHSC that if possible, they urge encourage, provide incentives to the applicants of 61 Park to remove as much as possible the hardscaping, particularly the pavement, which can accommodate multiple cars, and any superfluous hardscaping from the east and the rear yard and the west rear yard as much as possible. And that they be encouraged to replant mature trees and shrubs to create a natural canopy and boundary that existed between our properties. I believe there are some slides that Eric has, and we can refer to them in a minute. I hope if you can put them up, Eric. My husband and I are the occupants and owners of 338 Elmwood, and we would be willing to cooperate and negotiate within reason. Eric, if you can just, let me just finish this and then we can go to the slides. So we, the occupants and owners of 338 Elmwood, would be willing to cooperate and negotiate within reason some support for the restoration of a green curtain on our respective property lines. We as neighbors would need to work together and agree to ask a conservation landscape professional to facilitate the process, which would be of mutual benefit to both our properties and is in keeping with the conservation and green softscaping of our heritage neighborhood as protected by the Ontario Heritage Act. And so let us just go down. Eric, if you can pull up the original canopy, or just scroll right to the bottom. So that slide, if you look at the bottom, the bird's eye slide was a 2010 picture of Mrs. Littlejohn's house prior, that one, there we go. Prior to the ease purchase and bulldozing. And as you can see, it is very, very green. Now, Eric, if you can go to the slides of the snowy fences in our backyard. Do you have those, Eric? Is Eric there?
Hi, Beatrice. I'm not sure what you're asking for.
Oh, okay. I submitted pictures of the fence line at the rear of our house for the committee. Sorry, I meant to put on this timer.
Chair, I'm in your hands. I can try to pull them up. It will take time. There were a number of submissions from the speaker.
Yes, there were. Anyway, there are a lot of. So instead,
I think if you can speak to it without the slides, just for the interest of time.
Okay.
I know that the slides have been circulated to members.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So what I'm asking for is that a replacement of the green boundaries, the green canopy in consultation with a conservation landscape professional. And there is a plastic fence, which is the fence posts were actually drilled. And I think the fence posts, or the holes for the fence posts, probably are on our property. They're certainly on an ancient retaining wall that is more than 100 years old. It was a boundary wall that shows up in a 1928 photo. It also shows up in the surveys that I submitted to the committee. And if there is further damage to those remaining trees that are 30 centimeters plus to 50 centimeters in circumference, which there will be because their root beds were damaged, that the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. E, be encouraged to replace those trees of a deciduous coniferous variety. And I will, I know that Eric has this introduction to other materials that I submitted to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you, Eric, and all the hardworking staff. And I think Mr. Podolsky knows the West Addition on our house because I believe he may have designed it in 1970. So thank you for your time.
And thank you for yours, and thank you for your delegation. It's much appreciated. Do any members of the subcommittee have any questions? I don't see, oh, I see Councillor Moffat has a question for you.
I'm just going to say on behalf of Barry, there should have been a point of privilege that someone let out his age. Just doesn't seem fair.
I won't talk about your age.
That's a good. Yeah, I didn't know if he'd have to recuse himself, but anyway.
Well, thank you for that moment of levity, Councillor Moffat. I don't see any other hands raised, so thank you so much for your delegation. Does the committee have any questions for staff? And I see that Councillor Gower raised his virtual hand first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so what we're seeing here is the city issued a heritage permit previously, and the work was not done according to the permit. And I guess at the committee today, the property owner is asking for forgiveness. What I'm curious about is a bit of the process. How does staff usually ensure that the conditions of a heritage permit are actually adhered to by property owners?
Through the building inspection process, that we rely heavily on the building inspector to identify any gaps.
So heritage staff are not directly involved. I'm curious what kind of, do the building inspectors typically have the expertise and the ability to gauge whether or not a heritage permit would be adhered to? It would seem to me it'd be a specialized area of expertise that would go above and beyond a typical building inspector training or ability.
I think this project sort of brought to light that there was a bit of a gap there, and we're working on improving our process going forward so that we can work together more closely with our colleagues in building code services to identify any projects that may not be built according to plans earlier on.
So can you explain again, how was this flagged? How did staff determine that this was not in accordance with the heritage permit in this case?
This one I just happened to be going by doing a site visit in the neighborhood when I noticed, since this was also my file in 2017, so I was very familiar with all the details of this project, and I happened to see it firsthand and contacted the building inspector and then also the owner to discuss the inconsistencies with the approved plans.
I guess I'm glad you happened to notice it, but it's a really concerning gap in our process here. Like, is there any spot checks, or other than heritage staff going out and observing and having a look? Like, I'll put it something like the Chateau Laurier that we just issued a heritage permit on. Is there additional scrutiny on certain large files? Is there a random spot check of buildings that we do? Like, how are we? What are the processes for checking adherence to heritage permits other than just hoping that we notice things?
Oh, sorry, I see Leslie, you've logged in, or I'm just wondering if maybe you're looking to answer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. I mean, I think the key piece here is that the committee will know that this is one of the first files of this type that you would have seen. So I think it's important for us to recognize that this is not a common occurrence. You know, normally, as you see in every single one of our reports, we have a recommendation that says minor design changes are delegated to staff. Normally, when an applicant wishes to make changes to their plans that emerge through the building permit process or through the construction process, they're able to contact us, and we work with them through those changes. And it may be slightly different than the plans that were approved by council, but we have the delegated authority to do that. So in this instance, none of that happened. One of the checks and balances that we do have, where we rely on our building code colleagues, is that when we issue a building permit for a property that has a heritage permit issued for it, every page of the plans is stamped by heritage staff with a stamp that says heritage permit issued, no changes to be made to these drawings unless you contact us, basically. And it includes the signature of the heritage planner who's responsible for the file. So that's one of our checks. And then that frequently will reveal things. If the building inspector is on site and they see our name on the plans, they'll phone us. So I think that's the first piece. The second piece is, I think at this point, we don't have the capacity to be out inspecting every single property on a regular basis. Just we're issuing upwards of 150 permits a year when you factor in our heritage grant program. And that's a lot of resources that we just don't have. So I think on higher profile files, like for instance, the Chateau Laurier or 180 Metcalf, the Medical Arts Building, which was a file that I worked on several years ago, we do staff undertake their own inspections on a regular basis. So I've been to visit that site several times, or sites where we know there's potential issues or that sort of thing. So we don't have a formal process, but I think, as Ashley mentioned, this is something that has been revealed to us through this file that perhaps we need to figure out a way that we can work more closely with our building code colleagues to maybe even if we can do kind of one inspection before the end of the building permit process. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor. It's not, we don't have a full answer today.
Yes, and yes, I do realize it's a question of resources, which perhaps is a future part of a work plan or future part of resource allocation, something we can look at. And I do know that you are out inspecting. We have the Bradley Craig Farm on Hazeldean Road in Stittsville, and I do know there's been some work done, and that's something that you're monitoring, and it is a higher risk building. So I appreciate that. I guess the only other question I have, and I'll leave it to the other committee members for more, is if this property owner does not complete the work, what kind of fines or penalties do we have the ability to impose if the work isn't done to this new permit that we're going to be issuing?
Oh, sorry, Garrett, I think you're going to answer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to speak to the legal enforcement options that might exist should the work not be done. Now, we're hopeful that the property owner, by applying, is signaling their intent to comply with whatever is approved by committee today. And what they should do if they are complying is upon if the recommendations of staff are approved, they should revise their building permits and go ahead and remove those aspects of the construction which are not complying with the revised heritage permit, and otherwise bring the building into conformity. So if they don't do that, there are enforcement options that exist. We obviously want to leave all of those on the table. So if I don't happen to mention one of them today, the property owner shouldn't assume that we're keeping those off the table. But the two primary enforcement mechanisms would be prosecution either under the Building Code Act or the Heritage Act. Both those acts make it an offense to construct in accordance, contrary to either the heritage permit or the building permit. The Building Code Act has a specific process where we can issue orders to comply. And those orders are also binding on the owner. So we could use those tools to require the owner to comply with an order. And and again, hopefully this isn't the case, if the owner didn't comply with an order, they could be prosecuted for construction contrary to the permits and also contrary to the order that was issued. The possible fines that can result under both the Building Code Act and the Ontario Heritage Act are capped at $50,000 per offense. Realistically speaking, $50,000 is a very high end for those types of fines, so we wouldn't expect to see a fine that high on a first offense, but it is the maximum that could be issued. This isn't an offense that has a fixed fine like a parking ticket would or something like that. It would be up to the discretion of the court.
Okay, thank you. So I'm supportive of what staff have recommended. I think you've been very generous to this property owner, given the issues with adherence to the original heritage permit. We've identified a gap in review and checks against heritage permit that I hope can be discussed outside of this particular report in this meeting. And I think the property owner should know that there'll be a lot of attention on the work going forward. And I hope that we are able to use whatever legal power we have to ensure the work's completed as recommended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. And Councillor Brockington is next. And somehow Chateau Laurier did re-enter the conversation.
It's a boomerang, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gower. Some excellent questions. I just want to state what I think the chain of events are, and I'd like staff to tell me if I'm correct. So in 2017, the heritage permit was authorized. The owner did work and many deviations from expectations occurred. A reapplication of a permit is coming before us today because there are some things that were done that actually staff like and want to reissue the permit to cover those off. And the other elements that staff don't like, you have a condition on your permit that you're going to get the permit, but you have to fix these things. Is that basically correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so even though we're upset with the chain of events with this owner, we don't want to be punitive and reject the application because the application or the permit actually does some better things to the house, correct?
That's right. I would say maybe not better, but they meet the plan. So whether they applied for that back in 2017, the window changes, some changes to the half timbering,
sure,
we likely would have said that was fine, and we're saying fine today again.
But it also will correct some things we don't like. As part of,
yeah.
Okay, so that's where my mind is. I'm not happy with how things have happened, but if we approve this today with the conditions, there's a better outcome than where we are today. So that's why I'm going to support this today. Based on some statements that local neighbors made, I have some questions. And one is trees. That really bothered me. Is there an ability here to direct our forestry staff to assess the property to ensure that all trees removed to determine whether a permit was required or not, or does staff know that today?
Through their old permit, they received permission to remove a few trees in the rear yard in order to accommodate the addition. The plan, as stated in the original landscape plan of 2017, was to replant some trees on the property. As I'm learning the past few days through this committee and through correspondence, that more trees have been removed to date that staff were unaware of.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm looking to you. So what kind of direction can I give staff to further analyze what has happened here with respect to trees and report back to us?
This would sound like we would need to have a discussion, I suppose, with forestry and as well bylaw services. And obviously, I would be supportive in this instance of us examining those prospects.
Am I able to give simple direction to staff today in that regard?
I would imagine that we might, and I'm wondering if it's possible to have direction that ensures that staff speaks with other relevant departments on this and coordinates if staff is amenable to that.
Yeah, I think some staff maybe wanted to chime in. I will take your direction, Chair, but if staff have anything else to add, I'm all ears.
Mr. Chair, the application is in front of you under the Ontario Heritage Act. Landscaping and trees are an element of the heritage importance of Rockcliffe Park. Therefore, this direction would be appropriate arising from this committee through heritage staff, and that may involve consultation with the city's forestry department as well as with bylaw services in terms of a full investigation.
Thank you.
I would definitely be open to that direction.
Okay, so if committee coordinator wants me to provide written direction, I will. I don't know if he captured it, but that is certainly my intent. Chair, my last question is just regarding another comment that was made about hardscaping, the amount of sort of non-natural hardscaping that exists. Can staff just comment on that? I did not see that as a list of the remediation work that is required. So could staff just comment, please?
Yes, the second recommendation in the report recommended approval of the landscape plan as proposed, however, referring back to the 2017 approval for the front yard, which included a narrower walkway to the road and no walkway that the applicant created from the walkway, the existing walkway to the driveway. So reverting back to that landscape plan would then thus reduce the hard surfacing on the property.
But staff is okay with modifications that have been made on the side and rear of the residence?
Yes, I think in balance, they had a larger deck that was initially proposed, and they've reduced the size of that and placed that hardscaping as a terrace instead.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, Chair, I will be supporting the staff recommendation on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. The next person with their hand raised is Member Conforti.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add because a lot of what I wanted to make a point of, Leslie actually stated, like this is not, as far as I'm aware, something that happens very often. So it's disappointing to see because, you know, as a licensed architect, you know, when someone makes changes to your plans, you know, you can't just take liberties because there are certain reasons things were designed a certain way, especially in the context of a heritage permit. So, you know, to say that small liberties were taken, it seemed like the thought there was, oh, well, we didn't have another choice and we weren't aware. But I think after having gone through a heritage permit application, I think it's pretty clear that you need to get these small changes approved. So it is concerning, but I'm not sure what else to suggest or comment on as far as staff. They are sort of, that isn't their role to go in and follow up on these permits, and usually there's no need for that. But yeah, certainly glad that Ashley drove by and saw that. So I will also be supporting this today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I also see that Member Podolsky has his hand raised.
Yes, I've been following the events very closely, and I will support the staff recommendation for the amendments. And I think it's also clear that staff oversight, whether it's the building permit staff that will be on site, will be alerted to the issues and keep an eagle eye out for the remediation, that it satisfies the conditions of the permit, the revised permit, if we do that. One thing I would just like to say, Chair King and colleagues, and that is that the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association Heritage Committee has very clearly articulated what the heritage values are of the village of Rockcliffe Park. And it certainly is its park-like setting. And without question, that's why people move to Rockcliffe Park, if they can afford to. The other thing that I would like to just say is that it appears that the owner has not been respectful to that value of Rockcliffe Park. And just as an aside, because I'm an architect and have always had a high regard for the works of Werner Nofte, the original architect for this building, the renovations have not really shown respect for Nofte's wonderful sense of proportion and design, which I find regrettable. And hopefully, you know, there is no life after death, and Werner Nofte is not aware of this application.
Thank you, Member Podolsky. I was just curious if any members have any other questions to staff. I know that there has been a bit of wrap up listening to some of the comments here. So do any of the other members have any comments, general comments on this item? And I don't see hands raised. I just do want to acknowledge that I'm also supportive of the staff recommendation concerning this report. I've listened to my colleagues and I absolutely concur. This situation does demonstrate the need for applicants to follow the proper process and rules. There should be an understanding by owners that specific process and rules are associated concerning development applications in heritage conservation districts. It's really frustrating that the owner of this property chose to ignore the designs approved for the redevelopment of this property, and ultimately, I would agree with Member Podolsky, does not respect the heritage values of the neighborhood. No discussion with staff or with Heritage Committee of the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association concerning alteration of a grade 1 property, which requires the highest conservation practice. This is ultimately unacceptable. I agree where Councillor Moffat was going. In a heritage conservation district, you can't simply see a truck going down the street, rap on the window of the truck and say, you know, what can you do for me in terms of my property? That's not how heritage conservation districts operate. And I'm very pleased that in this instance, that the city reserves the right to pursue legal action on the non-compliance at issue. The approval of the application before us as presented does not constitute approval or acceptance of the past contravention or any contravention which may occur in the future by the owner. So ultimately, I'll be supportive of this report, and I'm also supportive of a direction as requested by Councillor Brockington to heritage staff to review the impact to the tree canopy in coordination with forestry. With that, is this report carried?
Absolutely carried.
Thank you. The report is scheduled to be presented to Council on April 14th, 2021. The next item on our agenda is a status update for the Built Heritage Subcommittee inquiries and motions for the period ending February 24th, 2021. I see that there is no presentation scheduled for this update, and it's pretty routine. Does the committee have any questions for staff on this item? And I see no hands raised. And I suppose that members also do not have any general comments on this item since it seems to be pro forma. I don't see any hands raised. So is this report received?
Received, yeah.
Received, thank you. The next item is a councillor's item. Councillor McKenney, on behalf of Councillor Menard, is moving an item in concerning the addition of 15 de Obelix Avenue to the City of Ottawa Heritage Register. I understand that there is a motion to replace the second recommendation. Can the mover please introduce that motion?
I'm happy to, or was Councillor Menard is the actual mover?
I know that we're going to ask Councillor Menard for comments immediately after you move the amending motion.
Okay, now I'll go ahead then. I will read it out. Whereas report BCS 2021 OCC Gen 0008 recommends that staff review the property at 15 Hazelwood Avenue for designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Whereas since the January 2021 meeting of the Built Heritage Subcommittee, the property owner has submitted a cultural heritage opinion letter prepared by Robertson Martin Architects, and whereas staff have reviewed the report and concur with the overall finding that the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus Convent at 15 Desquet Avenue is not a strong candidate for designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And whereas this site has historical value for its association with the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, who were present on the site for over 100 years and focused their work in education, health, care, and social services. Whereas the importance of the work and role of the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in Old Ottawa East and beyond should be recognized in any redevelopment of this site. Therefore, be it resolved that Built Heritage Subcommittee replace recommendation to report ACS 2021 OCC Gen 0008 with the following. Direct staff to explore meaningful commemoration of the role and contribution of the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus through a future site plan control process where commemoration of these women and their work in education, health, and social services should reflect but not be limited to the direction contained in the in the Ottawa East secondary plan to retain the grove of trees and statue of the Blessed Virgin located to the west of the existing convent.
Thank you for introducing that amended motion. Does the ward councillor wish to provide a brief overview of this report?
Just very briefly, Chair, I just wanted to thank Mr. Smith, city staff, and Ariella in my office for working so diligently on this. I think we've come to a good conclusion. And of course, the last meeting we talked about this. We were concerned about some of the timelines. The building's still there, so we made it. And I think this makes a lot of sense in terms of rectifying an error that was previously made in terms of not getting this on the registry. So we'll move forward with this, and I just appreciate everyone's discussions and coming to a conclusion on this. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Councillor Menard. So on this item, we've had no correspondence to date, but we do have a number of registered speakers. The first registered speaker is Peter Frood. So I would invite Peter to speak to this matter before us.
Hello, committee members. Thank you very much for the time here. When I first moved into Old Ottawa East several years ago, it struck me that there was some sort of a relationship between the Deschâtelet building and the convent at 15 Oblatz Avenue. I took a look at some of the local history, and it did set out the relationship, but there had been at that time no official recognition of the order, or for its contribution to the community. With this in mind, I initiated the request to consider the convent for inclusion in the register, and have really appreciated the support of. Are you hearing me, by the way? Okay, appreciated the support from Sean Menard and his office, and also the work of the staff in sort of advancing this request. I think it's appropriate that the sisters in the convent be included on the register. And I think also the way in which the motion now reads is clear that it emphasizes the contributions of the order of the order by conserving contributions to the neighborhood and the city by conserving the Virgin Mary Park along with ideally, possibly, at some point, sort of a public, additional public access, perhaps connecting to Oblatz Avenue, but that's probably for another discussion. The convent, I think, and it's been noted, it is an institution that was directed and developed by women, and the order has played an important role in the women's history of the city of Ottawa, which has not been fully recognized. I must say that during the process and looking at the report prepared by Mr. Martin, that I was really disappointed and actually sort of ashamed of it as a man, to see a report that was using sexist and misogynist language to consider the order's contribution to the community. If there's a way, I would hope that this report could be removed and revised and represented in neutral, sort of a neutral language, and you could say have the same messages. I think it reflects poorly on Mr. Martin and Domicile, and it's really a shame. But aside from that, the general direction of the motion I'm quite comfortable with, and it's probably appropriate for the city, appropriate thing to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your delegation. Are there any questions for Mr. Frood? Seeing none, thank you for your delegation. The next registered speaker is John Smith. And is John on the line? John, you might be muted. And I'm seeing in the application that John is still being connected by audio. So looks like he's connected. So if we are continuing to have some technical difficulties, we might go to Rick Morris next, and then revisit John as he works out some of the technical difficulties.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can everyone hear me also?
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, just basically, I just wanted to say that since the January subcommittee meeting, we have worked, closely with Leslie Collins specifically at the City Heritage Department, and then Ariella Summit, who is Councillor Menard's assistant, and we think we've come up with a good resolution. The draft motion that was created by probably a combination of city staff and the council's office. We reviewed it yesterday afternoon. We had sufficient time to then respond to the councillor's office saying that we concur with the draft motion as written. So again, just wanted to thank the councillor's office and city staff.
Appreciate your comments, Mr. Morris, and wanted to see if any subcommittee members had questions for Mr. Morris. I see no hands raised, so thank you so much for your delegation. And let's see if we can return to Mr. Smith now.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. So my apologies, I was having some technical difficulties getting into the audio here, so I'm actually on the phone. I'm not sure if that's sort of bypassing it. Didn't hear everything that Rick said, but I think I'm probably reiterating some of his comments that we very much appreciate sort of the committee having deferred this item from the January 20th Built Heritage Committee to allow us the opportunity for us to actually undertake our own investigation of the property as to whether or not it warranted a Part 4 designation, and really appreciate the time from Councillor Menard's office and with staff to work with us and look at options. And again, really looking at whether or not, given the results that came from our heritage consultant, which staff agrees with, that a Part 4 designation isn't entirely warranted, but clearly there's an opportunity for some commemoration. And the modified recommendation that is now before the Built Heritage Committee, we're entirely supportive of that on behalf of Domicile. And again, we wish to thank all those involved in helping us get to this point, and would definitely be supportive of the Built Heritage Committee recommending approval of the modified motion brought forward by the councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your comments. Are there any questions of the subcommittee for Mr. Smith? I see no hands raised, so thank you so much for your delegation. The last registered speaker on the list is Robert Martin.
Chair, I don't have any further comments. I think that Rick and John have presented the case. So unless there's particular questions, I don't have anything further to add.
Okay, thank you so much. And I don't see hands raised. So does the committee, does any committee member want to make some comments on this item? And I see that Vice Chair Quinn's hand is raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for staff. I just want to be clear with the new motion. This means that staff is stepping away from recommending the building be added to the register. Can you clarify that, please?
No, Vice Chair, actually, this is in addition. So the building would be added to the register, and should the site be redeveloped in the future, commemoration would be explored.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. That was my.
Thank you. And Member Podolsky.
Yes, I think, Leslie, if you could just clarify that staff has looked at the criteria, the provincial criteria? And have you also concluded that the property is not really a candidate for designation under Part 4 of the Heritage Act? The reason why I ask that is that by implication, that's the message that is conveyed. But I think for the public and the community, it would be useful to actually hear explicitly staff's position on the review and potential designation. So if you wouldn't mind just making that clear, that would be helpful.
Happy to. So further to the memo that was distributed to members yesterday, basically staff reviewed the report submitted by the applicant as well as our own information on this property. And we have concluded that we do not believe that this building is a strong candidate for designation. So we concur with the overall finding of the cultural heritage opinion letter that was submitted by the applicant, or by the owner, sorry. However, I think further to Mr. Frood's comments, we do not agree with the assessment of the role of the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus as part of that cultural heritage opinion letter. We believe that the sisters were an important order in their own right, and I think the evolution of this building exemplifies that. So while we believe there is historic value, associative value for its direct association with the Sisters of the Sacred Heart, we think that that value can be commemorated on the site through the retention of the statue of the Blessed Virgin and potentially other commemorative opportunities should a redevelopment of this site be proposed in the future. So I hope that answers the question. I can go through the other criteria if you wish, but generally we concur with the findings of the letter that was submitted.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Podolsky. So are there any other questions or wrap-up comments on this item?
Just wanted to thank the community for bringing this forward and for the debates that we've had about it under this process, and Mr. Podolsky's comments previously about this. I think we got to the right conclusion here. So thank you very much to Mr. Frood and to others as well.
And thank you so much, Councillor Menard, for your comments, for your work on this. I am definitely supportive of this direction. I think any other additional ways that we can explore a meaningful commemoration of historic sites, if we can't just do it through designation, is worthy of exploration. So I thank you for also bringing this forward. Is the amending motion carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Is the report carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. This report is scheduled to be presented to Council on April 14th, 2021. The last items on our agenda, there are no in-camera items to date. There are no notices of motion. There are no inquiries. And is there any other business? Ultimately, I suppose there is with the direction that is before us with Councillor Brockington. And I'll invite Councillor Brockington to introduce the motion or the direction. If he does have it in front of him, I know that staff was working hard behind the scenes and had circulated the direction.
Yes, Chair. So just to confirm for our colleagues, the formal direction now, and thank you to the coordinator, that heritage staff be directed to consult with forestry staff and bylaw staff, if necessary, prior to consideration at council, to review whether permits were obtained for all the trees removed to date and whether there's an impact to the heritage elements relating to landscaping.
And so is it the will of the committee to allow this member to move this motion?
Yes.
It is, yeah.
Excellent. So if it is the will of the committee that this be a formal direction, I would ask staff to advise whether this direction falls within the scope of an item of business already on the agenda and whether the required actions can be completed with existing resources.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the timeline of it being before council, I think might be a challenge. This goes to council. It might be okay. I think it's okay. Sorry, I was just scrambling to see when this was going to council because I wasn't sure what the direction was going to say. So this goes to council on April the 14th. That should allow us enough time to consult and to review the property with our colleagues as necessary in terms of what trees have been removed and sort out the issues. So we can provide an update to committee members in advance of council.
Excellent. We appreciate that, and we appreciate the hard work that you do. We keep heritage staff jumping, but it's part and parcel of the process. So we do appreciate the work that you're doing on an ongoing basis. The next item is one of my favorites, adjournment. So on adjournment, is the motion carried?
Carried.
We are
Carried.
adjourned. So thank you, everyone. And the next regular meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.